Hi, I'm Christy, and in today's video, I'm here with my January mid-month reading wrap-up, my first wrap-up for 2025. So how is it already the middle of January? This month has flown by. So much has happened just in general, personal life, professional life, just all the things. So much has been going on. So much has been happening. A lot of not great things in the world. Just so much has been happening in this first, 15 days of the year, which is wild. I have no idea what the entire rest of the year is going to bring, but hopefully all good things. So today's video, I'm here with my January mid-month reading wrap-up. So I have 20 books that I've read so far for January. It's been a very audiobook heavy month. I have been able to get through so many audiobooks while doing work, so that has been amazing, but not all of the books have been great. So we're going to get into them. I'm going to try to keep this rather quick. As always, if you ever want to see more of my thoughts or my full reviews on any of the books that I do read, any of the books I'm going to talk about in this video, I do review every book that I read, and all of my book reviews are linked on my Goodreads, which of course is always linked down in the description of this video, as well as all the books that I'm going to talk about. All the books, their authors are going to be linked below as well. So if you want to go back and check out any of the ones I was talking about, they're all linked below. So let's get into it. All right, so going into 2025, I realized for 2024, I had both started and ended the year with a 3-star read. And so I was like, that's not the energy I want to bring to 2025. So let me make sure it's going to be an amazing book. So I decided to jump into Keeping 13 by Chloe Walsh. I had read Binding 13 in December, loved it so much, gave it 5 stars. So I was like, let's just keep that hype train going. So I jumped into Keeping 13. This is a special edition that Eternal Embers did, I think last year, in one of their book boxes. It is so stinking pretty, very chunky book, but I am so glad that I did get these special editions before I read the series. So this one I actually ended up giving 4 stars. I had some conflicted feelings with this one, which I know this one is actually a lot of people's favorite in the duet of Binding and Keeping 13. I personally loved the first one, Binding 13, more, so that one I gave 5 stars to. This one I gave 4 stars to. So this is the second book in the Boys of Tommen series, and this series, like I said, it follows the same couple that we were already with in book 1. So that wasn't the finished story of their romance. This is actually the continuation of their romance in this book, and this is kind of where it wraps up for the time being. I don't know if the author plans to go back to any of these couples in future, not sure, but anyways, that's where this book wraps up with this couple so far in the series, I believe, because I think the next books in the series follow different couples. I'm totally new to this series, so just bear with me. So anyways, this series takes place in Ireland, and in this one we are following Johnny and Shannon like the river. That's how he says her name throughout the book, and that is how I always say her name now as well. So they are kind of one of those epic, meant to be, fated kind of quality of romance, very much protective vibes from him towards her. She's a new student who gets transferred to the school that he goes to. He is a rugby star, and she has a lot of trauma and abuse in her past, and so you get to see that featured throughout the series. And so in this book in particular, it's just a continuation of where book 1 left off. So with book 1, which I talked about when I reviewed that book, is I definitely felt the length of the book at times, and I felt like though it was needed at the same time for the couple to really get behind and rally for their story, for their HEA, for them to be together, because I felt like you needed to feel all the feelings, all the trauma, all the abuse that they were going through, or she was going through. You needed to see all of that to appreciate them as a couple, her as a character. So I felt like it was needed, but at the same time, I was feeling the length at times with the first book. And so that with this one, I felt the length even more, and I felt like it just wasn't needed for me personally. I felt like it was very repetitive, and we're seeing a lot of the things happen with the characters over and over in this book. And I just wanted something more. There are some traumatic moments in the story and emotional moments, but I didn't really connect or have any emotional feelings from them. Sure, I felt bad for their characters, but I wasn't crying or anything through this book, which I thought I might have, but I didn't. So I don't know. With book 1 as well, I felt like we got this really good setup for their school, for his rugby career, kind of their friends and things like that. And I feel like that just kind of all went to the wayside while we focused more on just what Shannon was going through and Johnny and hers physical relationship a lot. I feel like that's heavily featured in this book, and just them, their lust for one another over and over again. I feel like it was really repetitive with that, and I just wanted more of those other aspects that we were introduced to in the first book. I wanted more of that in this book. You do see still some of their friends, and you definitely see their family lives involved. I love his family, by the way. Her family, you see more of that and kind of things that happen there. So I don't know, yeah, it just felt very repetitive to me, and I felt like we got the same thing over and over, the same conversations, the same her needing rescued, him coming to her rescue, and I just wanted something more for her character. I wanted to see a little bit more character growth for her, maybe get into therapy, maybe get some help outside of just calling for Johnny for help, because I wanted to see the growth for her as a character, and I feel like she needs that. This one, it just definitely felt like their relationship was unbalanced for me, and I don't love that, so I don't know, like there is some therapy talk towards the end of the book, but I felt like that could have been involved maybe a little earlier on or talked about more in the story, would have made it better for me overall, which I also thought we might get like a time jump or a follow-up to them years later, which I kind of wanted to see them in more of a healthy, well-rounded place, which we don't get, but maybe we will as the series goes on, because like I said, I know we're following more of her family members, some of their friend group in the next few books, so maybe eventually we'll get them aged up and older and like kind of a see you in the future type of situation. I don't know. 4 stars for this one. I think it's solid overall. I do like the characters. I feel like I was just ranting a bit about some of my issues with the story, but I can both love a book and have issues with it at the same time. So yeah, not a perfect read for me. I love book 1 more, but this one, Keeping 13, was 4 stars for me. Next, I read Duchess Material by Emily Sullivan. So this is a new historical romance from this author that just came out last fall. I want to say like last November. And so I had an arc, I had a finished copy of this one, and I just needed to get to it. And so I finally did. This one though, I sadly gave 3 stars to, and I feel like that's kind of why I wasn't excited to get to it. I just kind of felt those vibes before going in. So this is an author that I have read before. I really loved her previous series and the book of that series, Rogue to Remember. I love that book to pieces. That's my favorite book from her. And so this one, it was just okay. I gave it 3 stars. This one was kind of described as Miss Scarlet and the Duke, but with more kissing moments in it. If you have watched that kind of masterpiece show, this one, it is childhood friends to lovers. She is his best friend's younger sister. She's a blue stocking school teacher heroine. He is more of that kind of starchy, grumpy, cold Duke. There is a bit of a mystery element to this one as well. This one, like I said, I love the author's writing. I love the tropes in this one. I wanted just something more, and I couldn't really put my finger on what I needed more from the book, but I needed something more. I needed more of the kind of moments pulled together a little bit more. Basically in here, they are childhood friends, and they kind of always had that faded aspect to the relationship where you could tell they were going to eventually become something, but instead the hero ended up inheriting a dukedom, which kind of took his life in a different way. And so they kind of went different ways for a while. And so now they are back in one another's lives. Her sister is best friends with the hero. So I did like that we're getting a best friend's younger sister, but where the hero is actually best friends with the sister, because usually we get like brother's best friend. So I did like that aspect to the book as well. But overall, I don't know, it was just missing a little bit something for me. So yeah, 3 stars. It was fine. All right, and then I picked up Graves from Caitlin Taylor. So this one I had seen this author mentioned a few times from a few different friends, and I wanted to give this book a try. I honestly didn't know anything going in besides the blurb, which kind of suggested that it was a heroine torn between 2 brothers. So I decided to give it a whirl, give it a try. It's on Kindle Unlimited. And this one was a major miss for me at 2 stars. So this one, like I said, I didn't really have high hopes for it, high expectations. I kind of just went into it just knowing a little bit about the blurb and knowing that some friends liked this author's writing and some of her other books. And so I decided, you know what, I'll give it a try. I haven't read kind of a dark romance in a while. Let me jump in. And so I will say it is a dark romance. There is kind of graphic violence and violence on the page, which is not an issue for me, which I saw other people, they do complain about the darker elements to it, but the author does a good job of giving you the content warnings ahead of time, and like it's a dark romance, so I don't know. Anyways, I knew what to expect as far as that, and I knew the premise, so I didn't have issues with what was happening in the story as well, as far as the heroine being with 2 guys who are twin brothers. That didn't bother me either. I mean, it's fiction, and so, but I did have issues with the writing and the characters overall, so that is where the 2 stars come in. Basically in here, we see these 2 twin brothers, and they both end up becoming obsessed with the heroine in their own ways and at different times. There is a lot of like possessive, unhinged behavior from both of them, and it felt in like an unbelievable way to me. So that was one of my issues with the story, and just that very like insta-lovey, we are so obsessed, we're so consumed, we need everything from her, that kind of feeling. It just didn't feel believable enough for me. Like I was like, why though? Like I don't know. I didn't get it. Wasn't a fan of the writing. It just was very, I don't know, not it for me. So yeah, 2 stars. Probably won't pick up anything from this author in the future. All right, and then I had an audio ALC of A Sea of Unspoken Things by Adrienne Young. So this is her newest release, which just came out this month. This one I gave 3, maybe 3.5 stars to. I'm really sad I didn't love this one more because in December I had read The Unmaking of June Farrow, which I absolutely loved from this author. And this one was just a miss for me. If you have read A Spells for Forgetting by this author, which I had read that one a couple years ago, this one is more in the vein of that. So kind of more of a mystery, suspensey type element to the story, which I kind of wanted more of that magical realism that we got with The Unmaking of June Farrow. So yeah, for me, of what I've read from this author, it just wasn't a favorite. I will say the writing's great. The author does these atmospheric vibes super well. I love the kind of like Pacific Northwest setting, kind of all of those things, all the vibes, all the writing was there for me. I just kind of wanted more with the story. It was very slow, and I was just waiting for the plot to pick up the whole time. Like I said though, if you have read Spells for Forgetting by this author and you liked that one, you probably will like this book as well, because it kind of has that same kind of like very, very light light, like super lightest light of maybe fantasy, magical realism elements to it. Very light, don't go in expecting a lot. That, but mixed with like mystery. This one is heavy on that. Basically in here, we're following twin siblings. One of them has recently passed away and the other one ends up coming to this small town to kind of discover some secrets, some things in their twin's life. And because they're still feeling this pull connection to their twin. And so it kind of goes from there with, like I said, this whole mystery element to the story. It was fine. I just didn't love it as much as the two previous books I enjoyed from this author. So yeah, 3.5 stars for me. So next I just needed a hit because everything was becoming to 3 stars for me. So I decided to jump into an early copy I had of A First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. This comes out in February, on February 11th. And I love this book. It was so amazing. My first 5-star read of the year. B.K. Borison is an author I have loved for years now, since she was writing her Love Light Farm series as an indie author. Have loved her books to pieces. And so I knew this one was going to hit for me. And so it definitely did. I gave it 5 stars. I loved it so much. This one just gave me all of the swoony, romantic, he falls first, kind of all of that energy with the characters. I love the way she writes characters. They're just so good. I love this book to pieces. This one was also said to give like Sleepless in Seattle kind of inspired vibes, and it totally does. So in here, the hero is a radio show host where basically he has kind of a love hotline, kind of dating advice type of channel. And so he has recently fallen out of love with love, which is making his job really hard of trying to talk to other people about their love lives and dating. And so one night he actually ends up getting a call in to the radio show, and it is this young girl. And so she wants help from him for her mom, who's a single mom, and she wants to kind of help out her mom with dating. And so her mom eventually ends up getting on the conversation as well. And that little clip of their kind of interaction ends up going viral, and they kind of go their separate ways. And then later, like I said, it goes viral, and the radio show producers kind of want the hero to get involved and contact the heroine, who was the single mom, and get her and him on a show together, or to get him to help her find dates and kind of things like that, help her out with her love life. And so it goes from there. Like I said, this one was just everything that I love in romance books. I loved the characters in here, and I loved that emotional depth to their characters as well. The heroine in here is a single mom to her daughter, but she does raise her with her ex as well as her ex-partner. And I loved seeing their found family unit that they have. It was amazing. So I love the support that she has. She is a single mom, and she's also a car mechanic, which I feel like was fun to see a heroine as a car mechanic and just kind of getting that aspect to her life in the story. Of course, her and the hero end up falling for one another, and I just loved how the heroine wanted more for her life. She was a romantic at heart, and she just wants to find love, and she wants to find her person, her happiness. And so it was just so good. The hero eventually starts helping her kind of get on dates and things like that. But of course, he starts to feel a certain kind of way about that. Just so stinking cute and sweet and charming and swoony. Love this one to pieces. 5 stars. So excited. It was my first 5-star read for the year. Next up is Steal My Heart by Laura Pavlov. So this is the first book in her Rosewood River series. This is a small town series. I had an arc of this one, so I got to read it early, but it is out now. And I enjoyed this one. Not a new favorite for me from Laura, but I still gave it 4 stars, but it's kind of more on the low 4-star for me. So in here, we are basically having a workplace relationship. It's a bit of forbidden as well. The hero and the heroine are both lawyers, and they end up working at the law firm where her father owns and is a partner of. And so the hero basically has to become her mentor, and he feels a certain way about that because he's like, obviously you only got the job because of nepotism. And so he doesn't feel like she's skilled or anything like that at the beginning of the story. And so he's not looking forward to having to mentor her. And especially she comes in at the beginning, she kind of sets off the alarm for the building. She spills coffee on him. Like, it's not going well, but eventually they obviously do have to start working together, and he sees that she actually is talented and she is a really great lawyer. And so it kind of goes from there. The hero in here is a bit of a grumpy jerk in the beginning of the story, which isn't always my favorite thing depending on how it's handled. And so the way he was kind of just, I didn't vibe with it perfectly. So there is a little bit of that. And in here, I did like, though, the found family of it all, which he has a chat convo with his brothers and his cousins, who are all going to be probably heroes of the series as well. So I did like that. The hero in here is also, he's the twin brother of Emerson, the heroine from Beating Heart in the previous Magnolia Falls series. So her and her hero Nash, and then Beefcake, who was the adorable child featured throughout that entire series, do make an appearance in this, which live for those moments. So I did love that, and I liked the overall small town series. I just didn't super connect with this couple in particular. They had some good moments, but I wasn't like wowed, if that makes sense. I am excited for the series though. So overall, solid 4 stars for me. So that is Steal My Heart by Laura Pavlov. All right, so then I jumped into Before Us by Julie Ann, which was on my TBR for the month because I wanted to read more of this author's backlist and maybe some of her more emotional ones. And I don't know, this one I gave 2.5/3 stars. This author in the past has really really been hit and miss for me, and this one was just one of the misses. So this one, I knew the premise. That isn't why I rated it any lower than I did. So basically in this one, the heroine is living out of her car when the story starts. She has epilepsy, and so she had to choose between being able to pay rent or being able to pay for medication health care. And so right now she's living out of her car, and she ends up getting this cleaning job, and so she ends up working for the hero and his wife at the time, who's actually passing away and really ill. And so she is there to look after their house and kind of just clean up for them. And so eventually the heroine actually becomes really good friends with the hero's wife, who is about to pass away. Like, you know that going into the story that that's what's going to happen, because it's going to be the heroine and the hero story. And so anyways, you get to see the heroine be friends with his wife, which I thought their friendship was nice. It was nice to see. It was kind of interesting though, because the wife is kind of pushing or saying like she gives her stamp of approval for her husband to kind of move on once she is no longer here. Like, I did like her kind of outlook on life. Like, she had a previous love herself. And so she pretty much is in it's soulmates, spelled S-O-U-L, not S-O-L-E. So she is kind of in that vibe and kind of feeling of life. And so she's like, you know, we're not meant to be forever. Like, I want him to be happy. Maybe you and him should hook up, kind of things like that, which was kind of joking, but also like she knows the heroine is also crushing on her husband while she's still there. I don't know. Felt a little weird, but so it kind of goes from there. Eventually she does pass away, and then the heroine and the hero, he realizes that the heroine is kind of struggling, living out of her car, and so he moves her into their house. And so he's actually like, I can offer you medical insurance. He is a pilot. He's barely around. He's like, let's have a marriage of convenience. You can get the insurance, and then I don't want any other type of relationship. We're just friends, whatever. Go do your life. You want to become a photographer? Cool, go do that. Just like get the medical insurance from me. And so it kind of goes from there. And so a lot of the time in the story, they're actually not even around one another, because she ends up taking jobs elsewhere, kind of goes from there. But the heroine's super crushing on him since the moment she met him. So that's always been kind of an aspect to their story. Kind of goes from there, and I just never really connected to these characters. The hero in particular, I feel like we don't really know him, even though we do get his POV a lot. So I don't know. It was fine. It was okay. 2.5/3 stars, not my favorite from this author. And so I'm kind of questioning if I even want to read more of her books going forward, because I feel like there's such hits or misses from me. So I don't know. This one was a miss. I did have the audio already, so there is that. So I don't know. On to the next. All right, next I read Fantasma by Kaylee Smith, and this one I actually really enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars, which I actually did have a video go up recently for fantasy books, fantasies that I thought were either like yes or no, or maybe that you should pick them up. And so this one was featured in that. So I'll link that video below. But this one I did like. I gave it 4 stars. I was a little wary about going into this one, just because of some of the reviews I had heard about it before, and knowing the type of fantasies I like, I was a little wary, but I decided to give it a go since I had the audiobook as well. And so I'm so glad that I did jump into it, because I actually did end up enjoying it. Basically in here, it is set in New Orleans, and we're following the heroine and her sister at the beginning of the story. Their mother, who was a necromancer, recently passed away, and now the sisters are about to lose their family home that has been in their family for generations. And so right around the same time, the heroine's sister ends up disappearing, and so the heroine sets off to find her, and she kind of gets pulled into this Fantasma. So it's basically a competition type fantasy, paranormally type event where it is kind of emulating the 9 circles of hell. She gets pulled in, and then she ends up getting paired up with the hero, who ends up being this phantom. And you kind of see how he has no memories of before or after, or even kind of in between the event. He only remembers the event itself, the competition. And so he is kind of like, he wants out for reasons of his own. And so he wants her help and is like, I will help you get through some of these trials, some of the competitions, and in turn, you can help me kind of escape from here and try to figure out what's going on with me. So it goes from there. I thought some of the aspects to the story were interesting. I felt like more towards the end, I enjoyed it more, kind of some more of the reveals and bigger things of what were going on in the plots and kind of things they'd figure out throughout the trials. I enjoyed their romance, and maybe some of the trials themselves weren't always my favorite. I felt like it was very insta-lovey, insta-lusty, and it kind of has to be with the setup of the hero not remembering kind of moments in between them seeing one another in the game. So I felt like that kind of, I don't know, it added a different layer to it, I guess, that I wasn't super obsessed with. But 4 stars overall. It was solid. It was entertaining. I did the audiobook and was actually really entertained. So if you want to go in just for a fun time, maybe check this one out. So this month has honestly been all over the place for me for reading. So the next one was Taken to Veraxia by Elizabeth Stevens, and this one I did not like. I gave it 2 stars. This one had been on my TBR for literally years. I wanted to get to it for forever. So I decided to kind of mix it up and read it, and I saw that the audiobook was available through Hoopla, through my library for me. So I decided to give it a go, and this one was just such a major miss for me. This one just felt very repetitive, and I didn't care for the characters, I didn't care from the plot, so I don't know, I didn't enjoy this one. 2 stars. It is a kind of like alien sci-fi type of romance series. I won't be continuing on, I didn't love it, so yeah, 2 stars for me. Next I read Fight by Sloane St. James. So this one is the first book in the Skyridge Hotshot series, which I ended up binging all 3 books in this series, which was a kind of interconnected standalone series by 3 different authors, and we're following these wildland firefighters. So this is the first book. I gave it 3.5 stars. I thought it was a good start to the series, but not my favorite in the series. I actually have a whole series review coming up for this, so I talk more in depth there. But basically in here, the hero is the captain of the hotshot crew, and the heroine is new in town, and she is an EMT for the fire department, and so they end up kind of hooking up, and then after the fact, he finds out some things about her. This heavily focuses on miscommunication trope, and so they go their separate ways, and then eventually he has to come in and rescue and save her from this kind of like blizzard snowstorm on a mountain. They end up kind of holed up in this outpost together, and it goes from there. So yeah, it was 3.5/4 stars. It was a good start to the series, but not my favorite, so that was that one. Then I read Embers in the Snow by Anna Carvin, and this one I really liked. I again talked about this one in my recent like fantasy romance Are They Worth the Hype video. So this one was 4 stars for me. I really enjoyed it. I had been wanting to get to this one for over a year now. It had been on my TBR, and I really want to check out more from this author as well. So if you have any recs for her, definitely let me know in the comments. But this one I really liked because it also involves vampires, which I love. And so in here, the heroine is the daughter of a baron, and her father ends up coming home at the beginning of the story and tells her, hey, I went and saw the emperor, and we decided to betroth you to the emperor's firstborn, who used to be the heir to the kingdom, but now kind of lives out in the outskirts, and people like kind of have rumors about him, and he's kind of scary, kind of possibly like eats, drinks people, things from there. And so she's like, oh my god, wait, what? And so it kind of goes from there, and so she is sent out to find this hero who kind of lives out in the middle of nowhere, that everybody has all these rumors about him, that he has been changed since he was a war hero, and you find out some things from him. I loved in here their kind of connection. Obviously he's very into her because of her blood and her smell and her taste, and so it kind of goes from there, and I just kind of liked it. It felt like a different type of fantasy one that I hadn't seen a lot of people talk about, so I did enjoy it for what it was. I gave it 4 stars. Not perfect, but it was a fun time. So yeah, 4 stars for me. The end kind of started to lag a bit, but overall I enjoyed it. This one was available on Hoopla for me with the audiobook, so I did like that. All right, and then because I am such a mood reader, and this year, this month, I am just fully embracing my mood reader life, I decided to pick up Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This is a book cover that I see all the time. Whenever I go into like a physical bookstore, I always see this book on the shelves, and the cover honestly always grabs my attention, but I never knew what it was about. So I saw it on Libby, the audio was available for me, and I was like, let's click that and read that tonight. So that is what I did, and this one I enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars. So this one is a literary fiction, and it's most oftenly compared to A Man Called Uva by Frederick Bachman, and so I decided to just jump into it and check it out. And this one, I thought it was really charming and fun, and I liked seeing the different characters that we follow in here. One of the characters, though, is Marcellus, who is a giant Pacific octopus, which I felt like was just so much fun. I loved that aspect to the story, and you kind of see how he is involved with some of the characters in the book. I really liked seeing all the pieces kind of come together. So I enjoyed this one on audio, and I feel like it was just such a fun, kind of fresh take to a story. So I enjoyed it. 4 stars. All right, and then I did a reread of Mine Till Midnight by Lisa Kleypas. This is the first book in the Hathaway series. So here's the gorgeous blue and gold cover and the step back for Cam and Amelia. Love them to pieces. So I'm currently a co-host for the Hathaway's Read Along with a bunch of BookTube friends, and it has been so much fun. I love to gush about Lisa Kleypas books, historical romances in general. So it's been so much fun. We did the Wallflowers Read Along last year, and this year we're doing the Hathaways and then eventually the Ravenels, and it is just the best time. So this was our first book, first read along for the year, and this one I gave 5 stars originally. I gave it 5 stars again. Like I said, it was a reread for me, but it's one of my favorites. I love the Hathaway series, and I love getting to see this family all over again. So basically in here we're following, like I said, the Hathaway's family, and here we follow Amelia, who is the oldest daughter. The oldest, she kind of holds the whole family together. She's the glue for the family, and so she is the one who kind of runs things. Her brother Leo is a bit of a mess, very much a mess in this story, but you get to see his character growth throughout in the series, and you meet their younger siblings as well. And so there are 5 books in the series. All of the siblings get books, and this is Amelia's story. And so you see how their family, their brother in particular, ends up inheriting a title and a house, and so they have to go and see this house and maybe fix it up, kind of become a part of society. And so you kind of see that in here, and you see in here how Amelia runs into Cam Rohan, who works at Jenner's Club, which is a club featured in the Wallflower series and some other series of Lisa Kleypas. So that is basically where Sebastian St. Vincent, the Devil in Winter, he he owns this club with his wife, and so Cam works there, so you get to see them featured in the series and some other couples from the Wallflower series, which is why we're reading these series in specific orders, because that's how they come chronologically in time, and you see kind of characters spill over into these other series. And so it has been just such a fun time. Loved it so much. I love the connection that Cam and Amelia have and how much he wants to kind of be there and protect and be there for her and her siblings. Loved it so much. The found family of it all. So good. Highly recommend. 5 stars as always for this one for me. It's just perfect. Love it so much. Then I read Mind Games by Nora Roberts. So this was a Patreon pick for Jess from Peace Love Books for her Patreon book club that she's doing, a book a month for Nora Roberts. And so I have enjoyed this book club. She did it last year as well, because it's a good way for me to pick up Nora books, and kind of tells me which book to read each month. And so that way, I mean, Nora has a massive backlist, and so with this, I feel like it's perfect because it tells me exactly which book to check out. And so anyways, this month's pick was Mind Games, and this one, it started off really strong and then I just didn't like it. So I gave it 3 stars, but it's very low 3 stars for me. But honestly, the best part was the first, I don't know, 30% of the story for me. Basically in here, this one has a bit of a paranormally psychic element to the story with suspense. So in here we see the heroine, and she is a young child slash a teenager, preteen when the story starts, and her brother are dropped off to visit their grandmother, their beloved grandmother. They spend a couple like weeks in the summer with her every year, and so their parents have recently dropped them off there to do that, and everything is just like perfect. They like to hang out with their grandmother in like this small town Kentucky life and just kind of do fun things with her, make candles, kind of help out with chores and with her farm, kind of things like that. Like they're gonna have a fun time. So you see one of the nights that the daughter goes to sleep and she sees exactly what's happening to her parents, who have of course gone on to back to their house to live and kind of work and do their thing and spend time together. And so she sees perfectly what's happening over there at the same time, and you see that she can see her parents actually getting murdered in their house in the night over there, and she can see it happening like as if she's seen through the murderer's eyes. And so it kind of goes from there, and that's when you realize there's like a psychic element to the story. So I did think it was interesting at first, but then as it went on, you see that the heroine has this like psychic connection, or is able to kind of tap into that connection with the bad guy who murdered her family. And so she actually ends up helping the police, putting that guy away, and actually ends up connecting some other cases to him as well, like some cold cases and some cases that they didn't have any connections to him for. She was able to connect all of those, and so he's put away, but then you see that he is also able to kind of connect to her through her mind. And so we catch up to the heroine years and years later. She grew up, lived with her grandmother after that. So you see now she's like a video game developer or creator or something like that, and she ends up having this romance with a musician that she used to be obsessed with when she was a child, and he's now a single dad. And so it kind of goes from there, and that's honestly just where I lost interest. I didn't care anymore, and I especially was not a fan of the entire like romance situation. Like the hero, some of the things that he does and says towards her, I was like, ick, not it, not the vibe. Didn't love that at all. So I don't know. I didn't care about the romance. I wanted more of the like suspensey element to it. And I just don't feel like Nora does strong romances. So I don't know. It was okay. The psychic element was okay. I just feel like too many other plots were introduced in the end of the story. So not my favorite from her. So like a low 3 stars. All right. And then I read the second book in the Hot Shot series. So this is Protect by Paisley Hope. This one I gave 4/4.5 stars to. This was my favorite in the series. This one is, again, we get a hotshot kind of firefighter hero, and the heroine in here is a nurse. She works with the burn unit, and in here it is also a single mom heroine. It's second chance. It is a brother's best friend. They also grew up together, so it was a kind of little bit of like childhood sweethearts to enemies to lovers kind of vibe. And so it kind of goes from there. I loved in here how the hero was super all in with the heroine. He was obsessed with her, and I liked seeing the single mom aspect. I love his connection with her daughter. Like I said, I have a whole series review coming for this one in a couple days, so definitely check out there because I will talk even more about them. But I really love this one. A second chance, single mom. We have some grief and loss in this one because the heroine lost her brother, who was also the hero's best friend in the past, and so we have that kind of going throughout the story as well. Love this one. It was my favorite in the series. So yeah, 4.5 stars. Then I read The Paris Library by Janet Charles, I believe. I'll put up the cover here with the author's name, and this one I gave 3 stars to. So I decided to give this one a go through Libby, through my library. I grabbed the audiobook, and so this one is a historical fiction told in dual timeline, and I kind of heard going in it wasn't the best, but like it was solid enough, so I decided to give it a go. And that's kind of where I feel like it was good, but it wasn't like a favorite for me. Like I said, we get dual timeline in here. So one of the timelines we're following is during World War II, and we're seeing this American living in Paris, and she starts to work at the American Library in Paris. So she's a librarian, so we get to see a lot of her relationships with people, with romantic relationships. We see her relationships with other librarians, and kind of all of those things during World War II. We see a lot of the war War times, and we see how the librarians there decided to kind of keep the library open, kind of how they go above and beyond to protect the books, even send some of the books to soldiers who are away at war, and kind of the ways that they protected all of that literature that they had at their library at the time. The other timeline is in the 1980s in Montana, and we're following this young girl who is now neighbors to the woman, the librarian we were following during World War II, and this young girl wants to really become friends with her and get to know her story and kind of things like that. That aspect of the story I was not really a fan of. So yeah, all the historical aspects, the library setting, the love for books, all of that I really enjoyed. It was just some of the plot lines with the 1980s time jump, and then some of these scenes just like abruptly ending and a new chapter starting kind of just threw me off. So yeah, I wasn't super invested with the pacing and the plot of it overall, but I liked aspects of it. So 3 stars, it was fine. All right, and then I read the last one in the Hot Shot series. So this was Honor by Danielle Baker. This was the only new to me author in the series. This one I gave 3 stars, maybe more 2.5/3 stars. Didn't really love this one. This one is another single mom. The hero is the wildfire kind of firefighter superintendent, I think. Basically, he's a boss, and he's also friends with the heroine's brother. He's also her brother's boss too. And so basically in here, the heroine is a single mom to 2, now 3 children, because there is a birth on page that happens in this one. And so she is a new single mom who her husband passed away when she was pregnant with their 3rd child. And so the hero is somebody who has always crushed on her and wanted her for literally years, even when she was still married. And so now she is living next door to him, and he is kind of tasked with looking after her, looking in on her, because he is her brother's best friend and all of that. And so he's totally fine with that because he super wants her. And so it kind of goes from there. This one really heavily focuses on the entire like motherhood, curvy, the heroine self-conscious about her body and her new shape after becoming a mom, and kind of some like mom kink, lactation kink, kind of all of those things. It kind of really gets into it. So a little bit repetitive for me. It wasn't my favorite, so I wasn't super invested. And I just felt like, I don't know, it was a little too quick for me. Like really 6 months after your husband passed away, you're already like moving on to a new guy. I don't know. Felt a little too soon for me, but I guess that's my judgment of it. So anyways, 2.5/3 stars, not my favorite in the series overall. But I did like how the hero was super obsessed with her and wanted to prove to her that her body was perfect. That part, of course, I am a fan of. So it was okay. All right, and then I heard everybody and their mother talking about The Favorites by Lane Fargo, so I decided to give it a go as well. I had an early audio copy of it, and so I decided to check it out. This one I really enjoyed. 4 stars. It kind of gives all of that kind of angst and drama and high stakes. It is kind of the figure skating world, and we're following this couple. And this book is inspired by Wuthering Heights, so just know that going in, which that is one of my favorite classics, so I was totally in. It also kind of gives vibes of like Daisy Jones and the Six, that style of writing and storytelling where you're kind of interspersed with kind of interview and commentary moments from other people about events that have happened in the past. So just go in knowing it is not like a sports romance. It's not like a perfect romance like that. It is a literary fiction with romantic elements. So you're seeing kind of this couple's angst and highs and lows over the years and their messiness and kind of all of that. I was just very enthralled. I loved the drama of it all. I was very entertained. I loved it. The audiobook has a full cast narration, which I loved. I really enjoyed this one. I see why everybody enjoyed it too. It wasn't like a new favorite for me, but I did really like it. So yeah, 4 stars. All right, and then the last one that I read for the month, which I guess I've only read 19 books. I said 20 earlier, it's actually 19. So this is The Autumn Bride by Anne Gracie. This one is the first book in her Chance Sister series. This one was on my January TBR. I wanted to get to it because I'd heard a few friends recently talk about this historical romance author, and I saw all of her books were available through my Hoopla, so I decided to give them a go. And I don't know, this one was just okay for me. I gave it 3 stars. So I don't think I'll continue on unless people like say the rest of the series is way better, or if there are other series I should check out from this author, maybe I'll check those out. But this one I was just very unimpressed with, so I don't know. Basically in this one, the hero, he is a duke, I want to say, or something. He's titled, and he is away, and he ends up coming home to check in on his aunt. I think he's been away for like 9 years or something, and he realizes that there are now these 4 women living with his aunt, one of which is the heroine, saying that they are her nieces. And he's like, not really the case. Like, who are you? Why are you like taking advantage of my aunt? And so it kind of goes from there. And so then you see the heroine and her sister and their 2 friends have been taken in by the aunt to kind of look after her because other people were not looking after her, taking advantage of her. So they decide to kind of help her out, and she's going to help them out because they need a place to live. I just wasn't a fan, honestly, of any of the characters. The plot in here, I honestly didn't care about any of it. So it was very low, 3 stars for me. So I don't even know. It is what it is. I just want to find a new historical romance author to read and love, and this one just wasn't it for me. So I don't know, I tried. So those are all the books I've read so far for January. Can't wait to see what I end up reading for the last half of the month. Hopefully some better things, we shall see. Definitely let me know in the comments if you read any of the books that I just talked about, if you're gonna pick any of them up. If you've had any favorites so far for January, I would love to know. If you'd rather leave me an emoji in the comments today to let me know that you watched this video, leave me a unicorn emoji, just because I know it exists and I can't think of anything else to leave. So leave me a unicorn emoji in the comments. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!